Hi, Vicky. So we're live at the moment. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on my podcast today and share your story. I've heard little bits about it, and I can't wait to hear more. So, can you introduce yourself and what your name is and what you do?
Yes, great. Thank you, Joe, and thanks so much for inviting me onto your podcast. It's great to meet you and chat to you. So, I'm Lucy. I am a mindset and alcohol-free transformation coach for women in midlife. So, I recently moved back to the UK from living overseas in Saudi Arabia for 10 years, and I'm based in Brighton on the south coast at the moment. I was in Brighton before I moved overseas, and I had another stint overseas in my 20s when I was teaching English as a foreign language in Poland.
Oh, in Poland. Interesting. So, what led you to being a alcohol-free coach? Can you tell us a bit about your backstory? Is it from your own personal struggles?
It is. It's from my own personal experience. So I'll just sort of talk a little bit about my journey, my struggles with alcohol, and how I became alcohol free. So I was a pretty late starter when it came to alcohol. I went to a quite sort of sensible, straight laced girls' school down in Ramsgate on the south coast of England. um, I wasn't a party person, so I didn't actually have an alcoholic drink until I was about 18 or 19. And
Yes.
I just wasn't bothered about it at all. Then I went to university at 19, and it was it was 1990, it was the 90s, and there was quite a big binge drinking culture in the UK at that time. There was the whole sort of ladette culture where it was seen as like quite a feminist move to drink pints with the men and try and drink people under the table.
Yeah, I
So
remember
it was
saying,
that yeah, it was that era, and I was part of that, but it was fun. I had a great time at university. I loved it. I loved moving away from home, making friends, living in halls of residence, sharing a house with other students, having parties. So that was great. So I was binge drinking, but not in a way that was any different from most people around me. Um, then in the late 90s, I moved overseas to Poland. I got a job as a teacher, TEFL teacher, teaching English as a foreign language. And I got into a relationship with a much older man. He was a British man, and he was a real like pub person. I hadn't been a pub person growing up at all. Um, but he sort of wanted to go to a pub every day and sit and do his crossword and have pints of lager. And there was an outlet for that where we were in Poland. So I was sort of trying to fit in with him, just trying to fit in with the expat community that I was part of. So I started drinking more regularly during that relationship. And then also, I was unhappy in that relationship and I didn't know how to leave. So I was starting to drink to deal with very uncomfortable feelings of like feeling trapped. What am I doing? I've made a really stupid decision, but I don't know how to get out of this relationship. Where am I going to go? What am I going to do? So I felt that now at that time, my drinking was still sociable, but I could feel that there was a darkness to it. I wasn't doing it just to have fun as much as I had been at university. I got back to the UK and moved to Brighton in 2001. I got a job at a language school in Brighton where it was a very sociable scene. Um, there were lots of like it was mostly young people on the teaching staff who just got back from overseas or were going to go off teaching English again in a couple of months, and it was fun and exciting. So I found like a social scene where I could step up the drinking, really. Still quite sociable, but I was experiencing quite bad depression, partly as a result of the relationship with the older man, um, partly because I was struggling to fit back into the UK after being an expat and, wondering about what my purpose was. Then I met a man from another country during the time that I was teaching in Brighton, and I was in a relationship with him. Now, I thought it was a happy relationship, and I thought that we were going to get married, have children, and I would move to his country to be with him, and we would live happily ever after. Now, predictably, that didn't happen, and I really remember I had a crush on him for ages before we started dating, and my friends said, yeah, probably not a good idea. He's probably going to have an arranged marriage and go back to his own country. And I was like, oh, but we're in love. Love will conquer all. And it didn't. And he did go back to his own country and have an arranged marriage. And that's when things turned pretty dark for me. I was devastated.
Can I ask where he was from?
Yes, he was from Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
Yes. And part of the appeal of him was that he was from this sort of tight-knit family, and I basically I craved the type of family unit that I didn't have when I was growing up. I wanted that sense of belonging and extended family and nuclear family as well. So that was a big part of the appeal of him for me.
And did he not drink, being a Muslim?
Actually, he did drink, but not excessively. He drank socially in the UK. He'd sort of go to pubs and clubs and stuff, but not problematically.
Not like an Englishman, as we say.
No, no, not like an Englishman. No. So that broke down, and yeah, so that's when my mental health got significantly worse. And I started drinking alone, which I hadn't done before. So I was drinking wine in the evenings. And prior to that, it had been sociable. Yes, it had been excessive at times, but it had still been sociable. So he left, my mental health worsened, started drinking more heavily. And then I changed jobs from teaching. I got a job in educational publishing, and I was home based. I didn't have to be in the staff room every morning. I was responsible for my own schedule. So that kind of, without the structure of having to be in a certain place every day, my drinking increased, and I was left to my own devices a lot of the time. My depression got worse. I was signed off from work for periods of time with depression. And, I wasn't making the link between my drinking and my mental health, because I thought the alcohol was helping with my depression.
I think that's a big mistake a lot of people, but a lot of women make. Were you on antidepressants at that time? Did you have help from your doctor?
I did. I was in the system for depression from my early 20s. I was kind of on and off antidepressants. So I shouldn't have been drinking anything on
No. Did they
antidepressants.
not tell you about how alcohol will make it worse? Were you ever given that advice?
I don't remember being given that advice, but if I had been, I wouldn't have listened, because at that time, I felt that alcohol was, well, it was a crutch,
Yeah, it was numbing things, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It was
Like
numbing
thing.
the pain. It was being able to, like, turn off my brain, turn off the thoughts. So things got dark then. So that was my mid to late 30s. So then I was drinking heavily by myself. I was starting to have a lot of physical health problems with aches and pains. I was like bruising very easily. I put on about 4 stone in weight, and I looked bloated and very, very unwell.
Is this
So,
perimenopause by any chance? Late
sorry,
30s?
Joe, say it again.
Sounds a lot like perimenopause as well. Late 30s, that's when
Yeah,
things start happening.
yeah, it was like everything, like my mental and physical health was just really spiraling. And I found it really difficult to get help because I knew that I needed to stop drinking. But at that time, there there wasn't the sort of help and resources and open conversation that there is now. It
There's
was
nowhere to link the dots. The
That's it,
depression,
exactly.
the alcohol, the hormonal fluctuations. I think that's what a lot of women have problems with, is joining those dots and
Yeah,
seeing what the links are and getting the right help for it. That sounds exactly
yeah.
where you were.
Yeah, and Joe, I was going to the GP and I was asking for help, but I wasn't really taken particularly seriously because I was still functioning to a degree. I was still functioning, and there was a lot of help for um, drug addicts, even though, alcohol is a drug, the sort of more typical drug addictions. There was help available for that. And I was told by one doctor, don't worry about it, just try and cut down, don't beat yourself up about it. And so I was like, oh God, I don't know what to do. But anyway, I did manage to stop completely. I knew I had to, and I thought it would just be for a few months, because at that point I was starting to have very, very bad anxiety. I just felt shockingly bad. So in 2020, I did stop.
How did you stop?
Um,
Just like that? Or what
I
did you
just
do?
stopped. Yeah. I mean, I had some help. I did get myself on a waiting list. Um, to be helped to stop medically. Um, so that is what happened to me. In 2020, I was given help um, to medically detox from alcohol.
What's that involve?
Um, um, I was given some kind of medicine. There are some things that sort of make it so I think you get sick if you do drink alcohol.
Okay.
I'm not sure, to be honest. And the funny thing is, Joe, that time of my life, it's all a bit of a blur.
Yeah.
Because I was just struggling to survive and desperate to get help. But I did that detox, and I know that I was given some kind of medication, but I can't remember what it was.
Mm.
Um, so I quit completely. Um, but I didn't sort of form a new identity. I didn't deal with the underlying
Yeah. You
issue.
stopped the habit, but what caused the habit was still there.
Yeah, exactly. And then, so I didn't address the underlying depression, anxiety, hormonal fluctuations, none of that. So now I stayed alcohol free for nearly 4 years.
Wow.
But I still kind of entertained this notion of moderating at some point, and I didn't change my mindset around alcohol. So I still sort of romanticized it and thought, I wish I could drink like a normal person. So I still sort of felt somewhat deprived. I hadn't done the underlying work to understand it's not bringing you anything positive. It's doing all these harmful things to your physical and mental health. You're not missing out. There are other people like you. I just didn't do any of that. So anyway, so I was alcohol free, still in Brighton until, what year was it? Early 2014. So I was made redundant from my job in publishing because at that time, we were dealing with actual books, like paper books, and the publishers thought everything's going online, so we don't need sales reps to sell our books anymore. So we all got made redundant. I didn't know what to do, so I thought, okay, I'll go back to teaching. I'll go overseas for a year. And I obviously had a connection to Saudi Arabia because of the boyfriend, the big love. So in end of January 2014, I got a job for a year in Saudi Arabia, and off I went. And I thought, well, it'll be easier than not drinking in the UK because there's no alcohol in Saudi Arabia. It's
Yeah,
illegal.
I know that's not true though, because I lived in the Middle East as well.
Right. Little did I know, of course, there's a huge
Expat community.
community
Yeah.
of making your own alcohol, and then going to events where there is actual alcohol.
Yeah.
So that summer, I went back to drinking, but not regularly and not in the way I had been. And I didn't actually get into the expat drinking culture in Saudi because I knew it was a slippery slope for me. So I didn't make my own. But what happened was I started drinking again when I came back to the UK and when I traveled to other places. So it wasn't frequent, but when I did drink, I was binging again pretty quickly, and I still hadn't done the mindset work. So I was working at a university in Saudi Arabia. I ended up staying because I found a place and a job that I loved, and I made friends, and I was really settled there. But then it got to 2020, COVID, and I was in Saudi during lockdown. I couldn't get back to the UK for 18 months because, the borders were closed and stuff. And I felt like I wanted to really address underlying mental health issues and physical health issues because I was starting to have quite a lot of aches and pains and worsening anxiety. So I thought, okay, I want to really look at the underlying reasons for why I drank. I want to find other women who want to be alcohol free. So I did a
How
coaching
old,
course online.
how old
Sorry,
were you
Joe.
at this point?
So at this point, I was 49.
49.
Yes, menopause, right?
Hmm.
I didn't know that, Joe. I didn't.
You just done the whole perimenopausal thing without realizing, with the anxiety and everything. And then at 49, yeah, you would probably be going into menopause. So
Yeah,
you're on top of everything else. And you didn't know, you had no idea.
I didn't know. And I mean, we had a doctor out there where I was. I was in the system. We had like various doctors that we could access. But there wasn't talk about the menopause. Whenever I went to the doctor, I was talking about my increasing anxiety, worsening depression, and I was just sort of in this sort of situation of being swapped around with various antidepressants.
Well, it's
Um,
it's bad enough in the UK, and we're quite advanced, compared to a lot of countries. So in the Middle East, I can imagine that, it just wouldn't be on the radar at all for doctors.
no, it wasn't. And we had a lot of Western doctors as well, but I think they'd been working overseas for years, even if they trained in the
But
UK.
a lot of the doctors in the UK haven't been trained in menopause. It's
Right.
only recently that they're starting to re-educate themselves. The doctor I went to at 51, and I'd already researched myself by then and was training myself. He had no idea. He had no training. And he said to me, the only reason why he just started learning about menopause is because his wife was going through it. This came from the doctor's mouth, and this is in the UK.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
was, I'm 56 next week. That was 5 years ago. I mean, things have improved in the last 5 years. It is getting a lot better. But still, if, there's still doctors, there's lots of ladies in my perimenopausal group who say they go to the doctors and they tell them all their symptoms. And the doctors turn around and go, oh, you're too young for menopause, and give them antidepressants and send them on their way. It infuriates me. So I
Yeah.
can imagine those years ago in Saudi Arabia would have been,
Yeah.
off.
I, it was so hard to understand what was happening to me. I was also in an expat community where people didn't really want to have open conversations about things like mental health, because it was sort of this culture of everyone was desperate to keep their jobs. They were there to save money, and then go and live their real lives back wherever they were from. So, and also it was a mixed culture environment. So some cultures were more open than others. So I didn't really know, how to raise this question of shit, what is going on with my health here? But I knew that it wasn't something that antidepressants could solve. So there was a lot going on. But I did a group coaching program with a group of about 15 women that I found online, which was around going alcohol free, changing your mindset, feeling really positive about it, removing the desire to drink, never feeling deprived. And that was life changing for me.
Were
It,
they
it
based
was
in
life.
the Middle East, or was that like a Facebook group, or what? Were
Sorry,
they
say it again,
were they
Jo.
a group based in the Middle East, or was that an online in another,
Oh, that was online. I found that online. So all of this was during lockdown, when I thought, okay, I am going to sort out my life and improve my mental and physical health. So I did it online. It was life changing because it removed any sort of fantasy or desire for alcohol. I felt good about not drinking. I felt able to have that identity as a non-drinker without kind of feeling ashamed and embarrassed and saying something like, "Oh, I'm not drinking because I'm on antibiotics." No, I felt like I can own this. I don't drink, and I feel really great about that. So that was great. Also, I was part of a community of women, and that was like a revelation for me, to understand what can happen when women form communities and talk openly about things that have been causing them pain and difficulty.
just the feeling of knowing you're not alone is huge, isn't it?
Absolutely huge, life changing. So, my health improved. But, I still had some depression and anxiety because I hadn't addressed the menopause situation. But then I started, seeing things online and reading stuff. I saw Davina McCall online. And then I went to a doctor in the UK during one of my trips back to the UK, and I was prescribed HRT. So that
Hallelujah.
was that was about 4 years ago. Um, so that helped hugely in terms of the anxiety, the mood swings, just the physical aches and pains.
How long did it take to feel the changes? Because a lot of women in my group ask that. And I always say, well, some women can feel like within weeks, others a couple of months. It took me 18 months to find the right balance for changing different, different doses, different types. So how long was it for
Yeah,
you?
I'd say it was a good few months. It took about 6 months. So I was given estrogen patches and progesterone tablets. Um, Maybe a bit less than 6 months, but it wasn't quick, I would
Wasn't
say.
weeks.
Yeah, but I started to feel a lot better. But then things became very difficult for me in the workplace. So um, had a new manager, and see, it's quite difficult to talk about because I have to be discreet, and it's also just it's still it's quite a painful thing for me to talk about because I was very happy in my job. I had planned to stay where I was until I retired at 60. I had a financial plan that made me feel secure. It didn't cross my mind that something like this would happen. Um,
Take your time,
but
lovely.
okay, thanks, Joe. So so there was some inappropriate comments. I was treated differently to my two male colleagues. I felt like I wasn't able to fulfill my potential at work. I felt that I was sort of being squashed down, talked over, um,
Was this,
laughed at.
Lucy, was this because just because you're a woman, or was this linked to your mental health and menopause, or you're not quite sure?
Um, I, okay, well, before this new person came, I had been the acting manager, and I was very confident in the workplace. I knew what I was doing. I got things done. I knew systems and things that needed to take place. And I think this new person found that very difficult, that I was confident, knew things, and wasn't afraid to say, politely and calmly, but I would say, well, no, actually, I think we should do this, or we haven't done this yet. So it seemed to me to be about being a confident woman that spoke out about things. So
So he felt threatened
things,
by you.
yeah, things became difficult. I raised my concerns to another member of staff. That member of staff escalated it, and I went through a very grueling process. Now, my complaints were upheld because it was all true. I simply told the truth about what had been said to me and what I had experienced. But things were never the same again. And do you know what, Joe? I had no idea that the aftermath of what had happened to me would be worse than what had actually happened. I thought
Do you have
that would
regret?
be an end to it.
Do you have regrets about saying anything in the first place?
Joe, this
So
is a really tough question, Joe, because
I suppose it's hindsight, isn't it? You don't know, do you? Hindsight's a wonderful thing.
I mean, I have to say I don't have regrets because I wouldn't have been able to. I wouldn't have felt comfortable if I hadn't spoken out.
Yeah.
But for a long time, I did regret it because my life there was never the same again. You know, I became isolated, I became excluded. Um, I had a friend of nearly 30 years that suddenly just stopped talking to me and would take detours rather than walk past my office. He would take detours so as not to see me or
Why,
speak
why
to
do you
me.
think? What do you think that was, Lucy? Do you think it was because his job might be threatened if he looked to side with you or something like that?
I think he had a lot of stuff going on himself. I think he didn't want to be involved. I don't really know what was going on behind the scenes. I don't know what people were saying about me. I don't know if I was now perceived as a troublemaker or a crazy middle-aged woman, that was oversensitive and imagining things. And to this day, I don't know what happened because that friend didn't ever tell me. I don't know what happened. Yes, maybe he felt that um, he his job would be under threat. He didn't want the same thing to happen to him. He didn't want to become isolated. He just wanted to go under the radar. Um, but I don't actually know. So
Mm.
my anxiety got a lot worse. I felt very shocked and confused. And, the like exclusion is, I've never experienced it like that as an adult. And I'd always sort of felt very confident in the workplace and I'd always had good friends. And it was such a bizarre feeling to be an adult and then like I remember being in this particular space where there was a group of like four women that worked in the same department as me. They were just sort of talking together and just sort of turned away from me. And it may not even have been conscious, it may just have been subconscious, but I was no longer welcome. I was no longer included. And I felt like a little child in the playground. And I thought, oh my God,
And your
I'm,
anxiety would have heightened all that, wouldn't it?
yeah,
If you
yeah,
weren't going through what you were going through, you might not have even noticed them turning, So, but
yeah,
when you're going through anxiety and when your hormones are fluctuating as well, everything seems so massive and you
yeah,
deal with it is different as well. So you would have been,
yeah,
bless you.
yeah. It was really devastating. And, for a while I thought, well, I'm not leaving. This is my job. This is my home. Um, but it was too painful for me to stay. And I had a couple of friends in other departments, and my partner he was like a visiting researcher to the university. So he would come over every couple of months. But in my actual workplace, I felt incredibly isolated. We were also post-COVID, so more people were working from home. So it was just this sort of concoction of circumstances, and I didn't know what was going on. It was difficult for me to separate whether this was menopause, mental health, or the circumstances that I was experiencing, or a combination. And yeah, it was a combination of everything. So I made the decision to leave, but I didn't know what to do, where I would go, because I didn't own a property in the UK because, I'd been an expat for a while and I didn't plan to live back in the UK. So I felt quite lost. But, through all this, being sober was like a foundation for me. Like, there were times when I knew, okay, I could have a glass of wine and feel better, even if it's just for 20 minutes. I could feel better for 20 minutes, but I didn't, because I knew that I'd feel worse again and it wouldn't address any of the underlying stuff going on. So I left last February. The year before I left, I'd found this community of women online that talked openly about not only being alcohol free, but just health issues, mental and physical health issues in general. I did a coaching certification, which was a mix of mindset coaching, neuro-linguistic programming, alcohol-free coaching, hypnotherapy. I did that as like part of my exit plan, and I loved it. And I felt I want to help other women feel that they don't have to conform to certain societal norms around alcohol and staying in situations that don't work for them. There are people that they can talk to. There are people that feel the same as them. So I did that. I left my job. I got back to Brighton last May. And I've been working on setting up my coaching business. And I feel incredibly relieved to not be in that workplace. I have some sadness around it because I thought it would be my home for a long time. And my first 8 years there were great. I had a good life there. Um, so I do still feel some sadness around it. But I think, well, I was meant to do other things. I was meant to help other women change their relationship with alcohol, or change their relationship with themselves and how they feel about themselves, and have the courage to not stay in a job, a situation, a relationship, a friendship that isn't right for them anymore. So I'm really glad that I did it. So that's where I am now.
That's very powerful as well, I think, because there are so many women out there that feel stuck, and especially when their hormones are like all over the place and they don't know where to turn. So listening to your story is going to empower so many women, without any of the coaching. Just listening to your story, I think, is really invaluable, and very touching. I'm sorry you had to go through that, but like you said, that's what's brought you to do what you do now. And
Yeah,
so where are you now? Do you have a partner, or are you,
I do.
go on, tell me.
So I see, I'm never sure. I'm never sure what to call him, Joe, because we live in different countries. So he's from the US. I met him in Saudi. As I said, he was like a visiting scientist at the university where I was working. So, we saw each other quite regularly then, because he was coming over there for quite long periods of time. But then I left um, to come back to the UK. His research institute is in the US, and his son and grandson are in the US. But we have a good relationship. It's a long distance one, so he comes here, I go there, and that's another reason why I wanted to work for myself online, because I want that
Oh, whenever.
freedom of location.
Yeah,
Um,
perfect.
so I do have a partner. I don't have children. Um,
Was
and
that
this is some
a choice? Sorry, go ahead.
well, I don't have children, and um, this is something that I struggle with in terms of where I fit in to the conversation around midlife. Um, and this is something that I feel quite passionate about, and it's sort of crystallizing for me since I've been back in the UK, because I'm more part of conversations around midlife. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of conversation with other women who don't have children, and what does that mean for us as we're aging? Aging without children is different from aging with children, and where do we fit into certain conversations? It can feel quite lonely at times not to be able to sort of
Do you
join
get
in conversations.
do you get questioned why you don't have children?
Yeah, I have been. I mean, I got that question a lot when I was overseas, because I was working with people, for a lot of people from cultures. I mean, I know our culture is very family oriented, but not, there are still single women and, women who don't have children. So I was asked that quite a lot when I was overseas. Yeah, I mean, I don't get asked that here, I don't think. So it's more, I suppose it's more my own sense of, well, what's my purpose? As I'm not a mother, I think society still
You know what, Lucy?
can define
I,
women.
sorry to interrupt you, but I think from my experience and with a lot of the ladies in my group, I think ladies who start having that empty nest syndrome, where kids are going off and doing their own thing, I think a lot of those women might relate to what you just said about what's my purpose. Because
Yeah,
even though they have had children, unlike yourself, once the children have gone and they're like, oh my God, I just dedicated 20 years of my life to my kids. Now what do I do? What's my
yeah,
purpose? My life
yeah,
over? So maybe those women, as well as the women without children, will connect with you on that. What's my life about now? What's here for me
yeah,
now?
yeah,
So
yeah, that's true. It's a funny situation. And see, I think being menopausal as a woman without children. Now, so my situation is that I didn't actively choose a child-free path. So I don't see myself reflected in that community where women are celebrating their freedom from all that being a parent comes with. But equally, I don't identify with the communities of women who tried to have children but had fertility issues or other issues. So have a lot of grief around that.
mm,
So it hasn't been binary for me in that way. It's more circumstantial. I assumed it would happen, and it didn't happen. But I still thought it might. I would say, even into my late 40s, I still thought it might, because I was still having periods, and however unlikely, I still thought it might happen. And I think one of the challenges in menopause as a woman without children is the final closing of the door. It's like I hadn't really addressed my feelings around not having children
I
because I
guess you had,
thought it still might happen.
and you probably had so many other things going on that was
Yeah,
not at the front of your mind. Because I know a lot of women who, well, you see on the TV talking about it, and Loose Women and This Morning programs like that talk about these subjects, and women who mainly are career driven and want to have children later on in life, they freeze their eggs, but they've pre-planned it, whereas you
yeah,
had stuff going on and probably never gave that a second thought.
yeah, exactly. And so now I'm menopausal. Now it feels like, okay, I don't have children. I'm never going to have children, even though that's been my physical reality for a few years. I hadn't really confronted it. And I think, there must be loads of women like me that just assumed it would happen or weren't sure. Maybe they were a bit ambivalent about it. And it isn't until menopause that you're really confronted with that finality. And it's like, and the whole sort of menopausal thing of not feeling desirable or not feeling sexy and, not feeling remotely interested in that side of things. It's like, shit, well, that's all gone. What am I now as a woman? I can't sort of fall into that path of my children are growing up, now I'm going to be a grandmother. I'm no longer, well, I don't want to sort of say quite as blatantly, I'm no longer desirable to the opposite sex, because obviously, that we're still desirable. But it's different. It's very different.
What goes on in here as well, isn't it? I
Yeah,
think if you
yeah,
if you tell yourself you're not desirable, then you
yeah,
don't feel desirable. So that's
yeah.
again, that's the mindset, isn't it?
Mine's absolutely mindset.
I mean,
So
you would be desirable to a lot of men because you've got no baggage.
I've got no baggage. I know, I know. Well, I'd say I've got other types of
Oh yeah,
baggage, but
so you know what I mean. No
yeah.
physical
So
baggage, kids and grandkids.
yeah. So it's really interesting sort of being in this space of like confronting stuff that I didn't confront as an expat, I was just in a bit of a bubble, I wasn't in the culture I was born in, so I wasn't sort of feeling that sense of exclusion and what's my identity. There was just other, like you said, there was other stuff going on. And now I'm back here, I'm like, oh, okay, so now I'm menopausal. Now family, I'm not caring for aging parents, I'm not caring for teenagers. Where do I fit into the midlife conversation? And I have to sort of be really intentional about finding what I have in common with
Well, you've
others.
got a niche, haven't you? You've got a specific niche there
I've got a
of ladies.
niche, yeah.
Yeah, a massive niche. Because I think a lot of ladies who, because since being a coach myself, I've met hundreds of coaches. You don't realize how many coaches are out there until you become one yourself, do you? And a lot of the coaches I know, they struggle to find their niche. There are a lot of wellness coaches with midlife women, but to niche down, they find that tricky. And that,
Yeah,
for me, that's a positive with you, that you can help
yeah,
that niche of women. So I
yeah,
find that I've never heard your story and your niche before. Although your niche is trying to help ladies with alcohol, but then if you niche down, that it's like quite a
yeah.
specific niche, and you'll be
And it
surprised, I think,
is,
how many ladies out there who will relate to you.
yeah. It's so true, Joe. And this is what I've been thinking lately, you see, because I haven't really come out as a woman without children, because I've thought, well, it's not relevant to what I'm doing. I want to help women change their relationship with alcohol and change their mindset. But then I started really sort of thinking about myself and my own struggles, and and how things get tough as we go through midlife. And a lot of it is about finding purpose, seeing ourselves reflected in society, feeling a sense of inclusion. And alcohol problems, they can often stem from feeling like an outsider, not feeling a sense of belonging. Certainly that was the case for me. I was feeling uncomfortable about stuff, so I used alcohol. So I think I've gone off a tangent there. But anyway, I
I
feel
mean,
it's this real intersection of wanting to change your relationship with alcohol, find your sense of belonging as a woman in midlife without children, and just feel that you are valid, that you do have purpose, that yes, your issues are different from the issues. Sometimes they're different from the issues that women with children have, but they're still valid. Your
Absolutely.
pain still matters. It's just, and this is what I thought, when I try and see the similarities and find these connections, I think the pain, it's the same pain a lot of the time. It's pain about comparing ourselves to others, not feeling good enough, feeling that we've done it wrong. It's just the circumstances around it are different, but very often it's the same human issues underneath. So that's what I try and hold on to all the time, because otherwise I can sort of spiral into, that's it, I'm not staying in the UK, I'm packing my bags and going overseas again because I don't fit in here. But it's not about physical location. It's about, well, it's about finding a sense of belonging in ourselves, but reaching out to others, connecting with other women and understanding that, okay, that woman has 2 children, I don't have children, but there's still so much that unites us. There's still so much that we can share with each other.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, and I found your community, and there is so much there that resonates with me, in terms of difficulties, challenges, and it's just so important for us to find these connections.
Yeah, totally. I'm really happy you found us.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, so thank you so much, Lucy. It's been really interesting listening to you. And I can relate to a lot of what you've said. I mean, obviously I have children, so I'm in a different mindset for that. But, I've lived in the Middle East and I've been through a turbulent perimenopause. And so listening to other ladies talk about their story, and I've also had my own battles with alcohol in the past. I'm 15 months alcohol free now, which I'm very proud of.
Oh,
So
that's brilliant, Jo. Well
thank
done.
you. I feel so much better. I don't know why I didn't do it
Yeah,
before. But anyway, that's another story for another day. So, very, very relatable. Like you said, you don't have to be relatable on every single thing, but there's so much within our lives that when women do talk to each other, you're like, okay, I found my tribe. I'm not the
yeah,
only one. And I think that is so important. And that's another
yeah,
reason why I want to do these podcasts, because even though my perimenopause and beyond group has like 5,300 women in there now, so we have hormones as a common entity there. I wanted to do this podcast to branch off that, because it's not all about menopause. It's not all about our hormones, although that is a massive part of it, but about life in general, about the struggles we have as
yeah,
women, and
exactly.
and the support that is out there, and just spreading the word to say you're not alone. The support is there.
Yeah,
Talk
yeah,
to people, reach out, because you're not on your own. So I thank you
yeah.
for sharing your story. It's really touching.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Jo, and like giving me this space to talk about it. Because, it, and I always think if you voice something, it makes it better. When you keep it in, it percolates and stews and gets a bit dark, and then you voice it and it lightens. So
Yeah,
thank you so
absolutely.
much for having me.
You're welcome. And enjoy the rest of the day.
Thanks, Jo. You
So
too.
before you go, just to let you know, I'm going to upload this into my perimenopausal group and on my social media and on YouTube. So if you do listen to
Great.
this, make sure you subscribe and like, because then it will reach more ladies who need to listen to this. So I just wanted to
I
say that before.
have. I've subscribed and liked.
Well, we need
I
more
have.
people. Anyone that's watching this, they need to subscribe and like, and then it will get this out to more people.
Yeah. Jo,
I should
can,
say
can I
that.
just ask, will I
Go
be able to? Oh, yeah. So it'll just be on YouTube. Yeah, it'll be on your channel, so I can just watch it there. And
Yeah,
can
and you
I
can watch
put
it.
it
I mean,
on
you can
my social
share it,
media?
definitely. Share it everywhere. Share it. The more you share it, and when you do when you do share it, pop in the post and tell people to subscribe and like, and then encourage them to share it too, because the more people that share and subscribe and like, the more women will see it and the more women
Yes.
will help.
Great. Yes. Thanks so much, Jo.
All right, lovely. Take care.
Thank
Thanks again.
you. You too. Thank you. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.